Starting things off, my name is Noah Reed, here alongside with Stephen Blakesley, announcer at All American Speedway in Roseville, California, does a ton with Blakesley Sports Media. And I just want to start things off with this. You've called hundreds of races as an announcer. Are there any races that still gives you goosebumps? And if so, what makes them so special?
Well, it's always exciting when, in my opinion, when drivers show great sportsmanship. And so there's really two instances that really come to mind. One of those is the late Brian Clausen ran with us at Silver Dollar Speedway when we kicked off our USAC Western Sprint Car Series. And that was an event where we had a ton of rain all week. So he flew out from Indiana, even though the forecast wasn't looking very good. He came out a day early for the media day and did all the interviews in the pouring rain and stuck around for the race on Friday and ended up having a pretty extraordinary performance in both main events and lost both main events in very narrow circumstances, crashed in lap traffic in the sprint car race, and lost a photo finish in the midget race. And even with all those factors, a wet weather, two bitter defeats, he's still stuck around and talked to all the fans after. And so that just always stuck with me. If they were great, exciting races, but also just seeing the way that Brian conducted himself. And then similarly, kind of not a one race, but kind of a whole season was the 2022 season at Madera between Kyle Keller and Jaden Walbridge. And they just raced side by side, race after race after race, and hardly ever made contact. And just the way they conducted themselves in that battle and so many great side by side battles throughout that season, those are the types of things that really stick with you as a media person.
That's amazing. I do recall, being able to see some of those 22 battles. They were pretty darn spectacular at Madera. So
Absolutely.
now, for those of you who know us personally, we have a very similar story in how we got started in motorsports. But for those who don't, I was just wondering if you could share how you got your introduction to racing and kind of what got you more involved.
Well, when I was 2 years old, my dad turned on the Indy 500 and I immediately fell in love and definitely fell in love with the announcers. I just thought those guys were the coolest. And they had one of the greatest announcing teams ever with Gary Gerald and Paul Page and all these Sam Posey and all these great announcers. And I knew right away that I wanted to do that. And so then we started going out to my home track at All American Speedway. Fun fact about All American Speedway, that was where my parents had their first date back in 1980. And so then in 1989 or 1990, somewhere in there, I was starting to go every week with my dad. And my eye was always on being a part of the media. Even when I was about 4 or 5, we have old programs where I was writing Bill McAnally's name in the program and Jim Englebright's name and some names that some of your listeners might have heard of. And so it was just even when I was little. And so then kind of like you, when I was in high school, I started announcing. I just was like, how can I help? They got me into the writing there at the track, and then it turned into doing a race or two every week, and it just kept growing from there. And now motorsports is what I do for a living.
Well, you just mentioned it right there. Motorsports is what you do for a living. And for those who don't know you, just take them through a week in the life of Stephen Blakesley.
Well, the biggest thing is summoning up the courage to get up on a Monday morning after a busy weekend, because typically every Friday and Saturday we're at a track. And in California, everything is very spread out, kind of like Arizona now, as far as it's 2 or 3 hours, 4 hours of driving to get to a racetrack now on average. And so you're getting home at 3 in the morning, 4 in the morning on a Saturday into a Sunday morning, getting up Sunday morning, doing some PR. And so then Monday, you really got to get yourself pumped up for the next one. So that's always the biggest thing for me is being prepared for Monday morning. But Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, all about prepping and marketing for upcoming events. And then a lot of times Wednesday, Thursday, Friday is editing of our MAV TV show. And then Friday, Saturday, Sunday, we're at the races or recapping the races.
Now, there's a lot of passion obviously involved, and it requires passion to be, a member of this sport. And I feel like a lot of people don't understand kind of the demands that go into grassroots racing, and it's really, really difficult to break into a top series like a NASCAR, like an IMSA, like an IndyCar. I'm just curious, what does it say about the drivers who climb to top levels of racing, but also the drivers who dominate at the grassroots level?
Well, I think the biggest thing that all of us in the media experience is that most of these drivers have a regular 9 to 5 job or 8 to 8 for some of these guys. But and so what that means for us in the media is that sometimes we're going to hear from these drivers kind of after hours, if you will. And so really we're serving the public during the workday, but we also have our competitors and their families to think about, and they've all got regular lives during the day. So sometimes they're coming across our content at night. So you think about it, it's basically a full-time job to put a race car on the track. And it takes a full-time job and then some to be able to afford to do it. So these drivers are extremely dedicated. And so I think the message for us in the media and for all of us that organize the races is that we want to try to meet them in the middle with the effort that we put out. So if you're going to a racetrack where they're not really working on the track during the week and they're not keeping up on the facilities and they're not posting updates, you're not really showing a lot of respect for the effort that's being made by the participants. And so I think the place to show that respect is by meeting them in the middle with some effort of your own.
And this is a perfect segue into my next question. What makes grassroots racing so much more than just another Saturday night show?
Well, the thing with grassroots racing and with all of racing is that you're expecting a lot of these participants. If you were to put this level of effort into your college sports, if you were a basketball player at ASU, you can expect an NIL deal and some money coming your way and some help with different resources. These drivers, even with the purses that we're offering, are still operating thousands and thousands of dollars out of pocket to do it. And so that passion is both a pro and a con because they've got their whole life invested in making sure that their program succeeds. And for a lot of them, making sure that the track or series they're a part of succeeds as well. But the con on that is the emotion that is behind that level of emotional and financial investment can bring out the worst in people. And so sometimes you'll get a little bit of what we like to call the devil in the helmet, where when they put that helmet on, the emotions just really boil to the surface. They're sleep deprived. They've worked every ounce of energy they have out of their bodies to be there. And it's hard work being in the car as well when it's 100 degrees. So there's a lot of pressure on these drivers. And so sometimes that pressure comes through in a good way. And that's why we love the sport, is the amazing passion. You're never going to hear about a driver riding around in a grassroots race. But at the same time, sometimes that pressure boils over and we end up having to play referee a little bit too.
Yeah, the fireworks on a Saturday night aren't just limited to what you see up in the sky. They're often on the racetrack. And,
Yep.
kind of shifting gears back to yourself, you've put together an incredible career of your own behind the microphone, especially in California. But I want to ask you, what was the driving factor behind staying local? And this one's important. Do you ever wonder what a different path might have looked like outside of California?
Well, I've had some opportunities in the past that I've turned down, and some opportunities that I wish would have gone further. But ultimately, what I like about my role on the West Coast in California is I'm home just about every Sunday and every Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday. Like those 5 days of the week, I'm home most of the time and even do all my work from a home office. So I'm able to spend a lot of time with my wife and my daughter. And so I can just go Friday, Saturday, see these awesome races, see a wide variety of races. If I was locked into one series or one role, maybe 30 weeks out of the year, I'd be gone Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday, seeing the same types of cars and the same drivers and missing time with my family. So I've really enjoyed the variety of what I've been able to do. Also, if you're going to make it in this sport at my level, you really got to be kind of someone that can do a lot of different things. And so the days are never the same. Like yesterday, I was writing articles. Today, I'm editing a TV show and doing this interview with you. So tomorrow, I'll be doing some more editing. Friday, I'll be going to Watsonville to announce. And so there's never a dull day. So I feel like I've got kind of the best of all worlds being local. And lastly, I just love the racing on the local side, the grassroots racing, just a lot less corporate, a lot more freedom to how we cover the sport. So I definitely have a dream of still trying to do some stuff, maybe like Indy 500, IndyCar type stuff. But I am really happy with what I'm doing now.
You mentioned a couple of opportunities that you either turned down or maybe didn't pan out. Was there one in particular that you kind of think back on now going, oh, I wonder what would have happened if that would have worked?
Yeah, I got offered to be the publicity director for the World of Outlaws in 2012. And I had just gotten married to my wife, Autumn, that summer. And they said, first of all, you got to move to North Carolina, which wasn't a problem to me. That's a beautiful area. If you've ever spent time there, it is spectacular. But they also said this was back when there was just the Outlaws, no high limit. They gave me an example of the month of July. They all load up into a van, all the officials, the PR people, the announcers, they all load up into about a 9-person van and they leave July 1st and they don't come back until July 31st. Like they are gone the entire month. They call it kind of their month of money, where they had that year 19 races in the month of July. And as much as that would be an awesome dream come true to go see all those tracks and have been a part of that, like I said, I had just gotten married and I had a lot of opportunities here, and so it just didn't make sense for me. But it's one I always wonder about, of kind of where the twists and turns would go. And so 2012 ended up not being a very great season for me, ironically. A lot of opportunities kind of fizzled out, as things do. But then the opportunity came in 2013 to open up Kern County Raceway Park, and we were right back up on our feet again.
Yeah, and for those listeners who are familiar with now Kevin Harvick's Kern County Raceway Park, you know that there's been a ton of action going on with Kevin Harvick racing there, Keelan Harvick racing. Mike Joy even made an appearance at the racetrack, I believe, a few weekends ago. But you talked about being able to kind of have most of the week off with your family, but there are still late nights at the track. You still work on articles, and the long drives at home take away some time with the family. I'm just curious if you could share some of the challenges that you face balancing kind of racing with home life.
So, like I was talking about, with how a lot of racing stuff involves people that have a regular job, that means the evenings they really try to blow up your phone and comment on your social media. And if you put out a big piece of content, like right before you're sitting down for dinner, you might look at your phone after dinner and have 10 comments, 3 messages, and go, oh my gosh. And so, what it's required for me is a little bit of planning ahead. And sometimes, instead of putting out a piece of content at 4:59 p.m. and then having your phone blow up all night, maybe you save that to 8 a.m. the next day, so that you can have your full attention on the comments and answering questions and delivering good customer service. And so my goal typically right now is like 8 o'clock at night, my phone goes away. I turn it off, put it in another room. I don't even look at it. And same in the morning. I try to not even look at it till at least 7 in the morning. Like, give myself a solid half of a day, a night to sleep, and get my daughter out the door for school. And same with Sunday afternoons. Once I get to about 11:30 or noon, phone goes away, and I'm just focused on spending time with my girls. Honestly, one of the ways that you can avoid looking at your phone that I recommend to anyone is get a watch. And I don't mean a smartwatch, because then if you're like, well, I'm just looking at, what time it is, and then you see all the notifications and you get overwhelmed, versus just looking at your wrist and keeping that phone in your pocket. So it takes a lot of habits, and there's days that I get behind and my wife gets on me a little bit. But as long as you can just sort of get the phone put away and just try to operate under some reasonable hours, it'll pay off in the end.
Well, and you touched on it there with your wife and spending time with your daughter. And, there's, obviously racing has its highs, it has its lows. A career like this takes a lot, of pressure on you as a person, because you ultimately are facing a lot of criticism for the work and the content that you're putting out. And could you just share a moment where a piece of family support meant the difference to you?
Well, without going into like super specifics, there was a moment that you're familiar with that happened with one of our jobs a few years ago where sometimes it's really hard to stand up for yourself in this career because it's a small, close knit world and you'd be afraid of burning bridges. And so having my mom and my wife really encourage me, like, stand up for yourself sometimes, has been super helpful for me. Whereas I think if I didn't have that behind me, I probably would have been a little bit more have a little more trepidation as far as saying no. And also, one of the things that me and my wife like to do now is I get a lot of offers that are maybe to do like one race somewhere as a fill in or something. And maybe there was a big family obligation for that same day. And what we try to think about is what will doing this gig do for you for the long run, not just today. We don't need to make this couple $100 today. What will this do for you 2 years, 3 years down the road? Could this lead to something? And if it led to something, is that something you even want to do? Or is it something that you wouldn't want to accept anyway? And a lot of times, if the answer is no, there's no reason to do it. And so it's been really nice to have that family balance and not overdo it and not do 100 events and say yes to everything. Because I'd rather say yes to 60 things and put out a higher quality and be more well-rounded in my life than chase after one thing here, one thing there. So that's probably been the biggest thing.
That's really cool that you've struck that balance. And kind of segueing a little bit, I'm doing a piece on NASCAR Cup Series driver Michael McDowell, and he's been very, very open about the importance of family support, his faith, and different elements that have allowed him not only to, start his career in, almost backmarker organizations, work his way up the ladder to now at Spire Motorsports, where he has opportunities to win in that car. And one of the things that Michael talked about is having the full support of his family behind them. And I'm just curious, from your perspective, how has having your family behind you given you the freedom to pursue your passion?
Well, that's been big for me because my wife Autumn doesn't work, and I like to phrase it like that as opposed to a stay-at-home mom, because I like to think of our family not as a one income family, but more like a one business family. The way that my wife steps up to help me with things with running this self-employed kind of racing business all the time, like we have to do a lot of handing off of broadcasting gear to different people at different races that we're broadcasting. Like on Friday, she's going to be going out to Sacramento to hand some gear off to a guy. And so without my wife being able to do that and having that freedom to kind of plug in, if I get an opportunity, she can be with my daughter. And so family has been paramount to making this whole thing work for me and allowing me to have the flexibility. I also think that in a role like mine, where I'm self-employed, kind of working for myself, that the fact that my wife doesn't work is a bit of a motivator, because it is fully up to me to make this all happen. As far as following through on promises and making gigs happen, I can't like go, oh, well, I can fall back on whatever her income is. It's on me. And so that has been a fun motivating factor as well, just to make stuff happen.
Now, I kind of danced around the subject a little bit, but you do have a daughter and you do love spending time with her. All of your guys' social media posts when you guys go on trips together are some of the cutest things I've seen, and it just warms my heart. And I'm just wanting to know, what's the best piece of advice on balancing fatherhood and racing that you could give right now?
Well, I think the biggest thing is trying to make sure that the focus can be on her interests and not just on my interests. And that's something I struggle with in my head all the time, making sure that her interests are still prioritized. I see it sometimes in racing where there's a family where maybe one of the siblings is big on racing and is a race car driver, and the family's pouring all their resources into that. And then you look at the other siblings and you wonder, okay, are the things that they're passionate about being looked at and rewarded and cared about? There's nothing that means more to a kid than just a parent asking, what do you want to do? What do you like to do? How was your day? Like, not just making every dinner time discussion about yourself, and just trying to focus on finding family activities. Like, for instance, I've never really taken my family to a race. Like, there's certainly some races on a Sunday afternoon somewhere, like going to Sonoma or something, that I would love to do, but I get to do that all the time. And so I try to make the activities that we do a little more well-rounded and more in their direction of things that they like to do. And the other thing I'll say on that is, some people really like to have a family where everyone's involved in racing. But at least for me, I've really enjoyed that my family is not as crazy about racing, and it just gives me a big break from it mentally. And I enjoy seeing them enjoy the things that they like and being a part of it. So I think that's really critical to find some well-rounded things outside of the sport.
That's really good advice. Thank you. Thank you for sharing that. It's something that not necessarily is on my mind because I don't, have my own kids, but it's something that down the road, I think looking back on an interview like this, but also being able to balance the time that I have with my family, you know, as I've started stepping into this bigger world of racing, I've looked at my own schedule for the summer and I go, oh gosh, I only have 2, maybe 3 weekends where I'm not Saturday night at a racetrack. And, oh, like, oh, it's the summer. Well, a lot of families do a lot of their stuff in the summer. At least that's the case with my family. So it's trying to find the balance between, you know, separating the world of racing with spending quality time with your family. So thank you. I do appreciate that.
Well, and the thing is, like, Noah, I'll admit, I don't see very many NASCAR Cup Series races. Like, I'll record them sometimes and watch them Sunday nights, but truly don't have the time to sit down and see a 4-hour Cup race when I've got time with my family and I already went racing Friday and Saturday. So sometimes there will be sacrifices like that as you get older.
That's a good point to add. And just to close, this one's cool. I saved this one for last because I wanted to give you a minute to kind of think about it. I want you to take the listeners to the track, just kind of describing the rich smells, vivid sounds, the colorful palette of the cars that stand out each weekend. For those who have almost never been there, in your best, almost radio style, if you will.
Well, right off the get-go, if you're a little kid that goes early to a race, you're dreaming of being in that pit area because you can see all the trailers, you can hear all the cars' engines being fired, see all the teams in their matching shirts pushing the cars and putting tires on, and all the different pieces of equipment to work on the cars. Everything's buzzing and humming and rumbling all throughout the pits. And that's a pretty exciting feeling. It's a lot like for people that go early to a baseball game and hear the crack of the bat at the batting practice. It's pretty spectacular just seeing all the trailers pulling in, and even the trucks are loud and all the, it's not even very noisy as far as talking. It's all very in hushed tones. Everyone's got a real deliberate thing on their mind and a place and a checklist to go through. There might be some loud, tall, skinny media guy like me or Noah talking to someone, but other than that, everyone's very deliberate with their own purpose, with their own meaning. And then all of a sudden practice starts and time starts flying by because things are happening. A lot of these races, there's 6 or 7 different classes of cars. And so you're seeing all these different cars and their bright colors and they're flying by you as you're watching at the fence, waiting for the race. And then after you kind of get used to that environment, then you get a whole new excitement when the fans start to arrive. And there's a little bit of a calm buzz among the fans. You can hear women laughing and men yelling, that's what we came for. And like this bit of a vibe there. And then if you're the announcers, like we're lucky enough to do, you get to give the big welcome to that group of fans. And that just feels so special. And of course, the anthem plays, and then you are into main event racing, and it just all becomes a blur. And sometimes it goes so fast because, like I said, we go through 6 or 7 main events at most of these events. So it's not going to be a 4-hour race like a cup race. It's going to be 3 hours of race after race after race with different cars, different heroes, different villains, different colors and speeds and styles of making speed. And so you never get bored because it's always different. And then by the time it's all over, you're just wondering when's the next one. So it's just a really cool, like, routine and rhythm to the way it all plays out. And if any one of those aspects goes differently, like during COVID, we didn't have fans, and some of the dirt tracks I go to don't do a lot of practice and qualifying. And if any one of those pieces is missing, you can really feel it. And so when you're at a track that has all those elements with the smells of the food, the lots of different classes, the lights, if it's a night race, like, you want all those elements to have a perfect day at the races.
Yeah, and I mean, it's incredible. I think you hit the absolute nail on the head, and I appreciate that. I mean, is there anything else that you'd like to add before we wrap up?
I just want to encourage people to go see a race. Just look up where a track is. And most of the tracks, the admission is pretty affordable, $15 to $20. And like I said, it's not just one race. So don't worry about it getting strung out or boring or anything like that. You're going to see a lot of different races and a lot of different kinds of cars. And more than likely, there's a track in your backyard, no matter where you are. And I encourage people just to experience it in person once, at least once, to get a good understanding of what it's all about, because there's a reason that millions of us around America love it.
Yeah.